Alright, welcome back everyone for another set of weekly oil and gas updates, US data specifically. So after last week's massive surge of US oil production from about 9.92 up to 10.25 million barrels a day, as expected, the increase over this past week returned to the normal rate, us jumping from 10.25 up to 10.27 million barrels per day, as those 2 to 3 new fields out in the Gulf of Mexico are completely online now. So we're back to just the gradual increases coming from new Permian shale wells being brought online, as well as some improved jump ups from reworking of some of the original wells and some of the other shale fields. Specifically, as we can see with the monthly shale data that was also just released, over the past month, the Bakken shale formation has increased by about 7,000 barrels a day of production. So not by much. It's about hitting its second peak, as it and Eagle Ford were both on their decline phase. However, a lot of their original fracking wells were drilled horizontally, like they all are, or well, most of them, but they weren't drilled very far out, because a lot of the stuff was kind of new, and they weren't really all that sure about it. So this them sort of stopping their decline and hitting a plateau and, creeping back up a little bit over the past year or two has been mainly from the oil corporations going into the original older wells and, sliding the stuff out longer, farther out horizontally from the actual well location. So like I said, a lot of reworking of older wells and accessing farther out than they had originally been. Eagle Ford did a little bit better. It crept up over the past month by about 15,000 barrels a day. The Anadarko region in mainly Oklahoma is basically about done. It went up by around 1,000 barrels a day of production over the past month. And Niobrara, or Niobrara, however you want to pronounce it, in Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, is basically approaching what's likely going to be its peak. It went up by 5,000 to 6,000 barrels a day over the past month. The main upsurge, of course, as you can see from many of the shale plays, is continuing to come from the Permian shale. And especially as you can see on the drilling rig map, the Permian region is absolutely just plastered with actively drilling rig sites. Now, price-wise, over the last week or so, from about $70 a barrel, it dipped down under $60 to $59 a barrel, especially after last week's U.S. production data release, showing that massive surge that came from those several fields out in the Gulf. However, with the release of this week's data showing the climb back to its regular creeping state, oil's gone over the last day and a half from $59 back up to just under $62. Now, regarding natural gas, at least here in the U.S., production is still constantly rising, mainly at this point due to several specific shale gas formations, primarily the Marcellus and the Haynesville. As you can see here, from these two different graphs, Marcellus is the primary upshooter. Now, this winter in particular, the U.S. has been just absolutely burning through its natural gas stored inventories. So when there's an excess supply, a lot of it gets pumped into underground storage reserves, and then we draw out of those when we're burning through more than we're pumping out of actual producing fields. This winter in particularly, we have just been sucking those reserves dry. Now, we had a break 2 weeks ago. Granted, the data is usually from 1 week prior to the week that it's actually released in. So the data of the week that we got a break during was released a week ago, but it's from the week 2 weeks ago, during which winter temperatures down the lower 48 states went back to somewhat normal, so the natural gas consumption level went back to normal. However, the extreme abnormal cold came back starting last week, and with the exception of yesterday, has been still gripping the lower 48 states this week as well. So our burn rate shot right back up. And we were down to just under 2.1 trillion cubic feet stored underground. And over the 7 days between that point and Thursday of last week, we drained out another 210, 220 billion cubic feet out of those underground storage inventories. So now we're down to 1.87, 1.88 trillion cubic feet in underground storage. And the data for next week, which technically covers this week, will likely show a similar drop rate. Because, like I said, those cold temperatures have still been sticking around, and obviously whether they keep sticking around for another week between now and next Thursday, obviously we just have to wait and see for that. Now, price-wise for natural gas, the market has been kind of mentally impaired a bit, and has consistently kept dropping the price of natural gas as if it's trying to pretend that this isn't even happening. And every time there's an oil and gas journal news release about it, it keeps saying, that they're dropping the price on expectations that the cold's about to end. And it doesn't. That is your oil and gas data update for this week. I'll be back with another one, obviously, next week. So if you have any thoughts or anything to say, obviously, comment section is there for that down below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will catch everybody next time.